Alright, back on these heads here. Been a few days. So I left off where I needed a little more clearance because I didn't have enough clearance right here for my bigger cam that I might run later, but most likely not. So the difference is, so we did before, got my calculator out here now. So we had a 0.88 spring coil bind. That's where we collapsed the spring into the vise over there. These are the new springs here I grabbed also. Those ones we measured are over there. Those are probably Andrew springs. These are crane springs. Let's see, we had 0.88 plus 0.05 clearance for coil bind. Gives you 930. You add in your cam lift. This cam lift here is a 440. So we need 1.370 clearance. So we put this in here and measure this, and you can see that we got right about 1.370. That's what our number is. Stupid light, stay on or stay off, one or the other. Go over to your 10 thousandths marks there. You can see where it is with the 10 thou mark. So there you go. So that's the intake valve. Now I measured this side over here, and the intake valve is a lot closer than the exhaust. So if you just pick a spot on the guide right there and you measure it, see about 350 right here. You go over this side over here in the same spot off the guide. See that one over there is like 280 or something. So the intake is a lot closer than the exhaust. So this is our intake, so this is our problem one. The exhaust, we're probably going to have a lot more clearance. We'll measure this one, see if it's about the same as the other exhaust. Yeah, we're about 1.350 again. Now one reason we have a big difference in this is an oversized intake valve. It's an 1/8 inch bigger, so when it goes bigger it goes up higher up the seat, so it sticks up higher, which means you lose clearance down here. So you could sink the thing down on the head, but then that kills flow, kills compression. Actually, it gains compression being up. It'll go back to more stock compression. But anyway, I don't like doing it if I don't have to. Okay, so right now we need 1.370 for the intake. I mean, if we use a cam we're going to use, which is a 440 Sifton. Now, if you're going to go to like an A grind, Andrews, it has 0.455 lift on a shovel. You divide that by the rocker ratio of a shovel, which is 1.43, equals 650. I went the wrong direction. I think I multiplied. 0.455. Divide, not times. 1.43 equals 0.318. 18. That would be your cam lift. So that's how much the actual cam load would be. Now you multiply by your rocker ratio, which is the distance between, that'd be the difference between here to your pivot and this pivot to the pivot here. And this is a variable number because it goes across different parts of your rocker arm. So if you're on the inside, it's one dimension. If you're on the outside, it's another dimension. So it changes. It's not an even number. It's a variable number. But they only give you an average. Okay, so now you multiply this number here by 1.5, which is the panhead ratio, equals, we got 477 left. So I figured about 475, so we're close. So I got a little more lift, so we're going to have to compensate a little more clearance up in here. So we went from 55 to 75, we picked up 20 thou lift. So we need to gain 20 thou more clearance. So the coil bind on these springs is anywhere from 810 on the low side up to 845 on the high side. 850 on the bad side of the springs. But most of these are around 830s, 835, 838, 830, right in those numbers. So if you put this one in there, this one's 830, 840, 850, let's call it 850. That's 880, we gained 30, there's our number right there. More likely to be shorter. So I'm going to measure these in there, we'll measure what they are, and then we'll know. So just by putting the different spring in there, we're going to gain the clearance we need, we don't have to do anything else. The other thing we got to check is our guide clearance to your seal. So there has to be room for this to go in there without hitting. So if you go from like this with your scale, from the guide to the back, the inside of that collar right there, which is the inside of the collar where it's going to hit here, and the top of the guide here. You got about 125 thou for the thickness of the seal, and you usually want to have about 30 thou minimum, if not 50 thou clearance. So if you give it 30, it's close. So I guessed about 640 when I used my calipers over here, and I actually measured 35 as I recall, 635. So if you take your point 635, you minus off your valve seal height, which is the distance between the inside of that seal right there to the top of that lip. It's about 125. It's 100 right now, and then when you install it, the seal goes up a little bit as a funnel, and it gives you another 25. So that equals 0.51, and you get some clearance. C minus 0.03 equals 480. So that's how much clearance you're going to need at full lift to clear your seal. And I think I did that right. No. Did I do that right? 480 is my valve lift. That's actually what the cam lift would be right now. And we're at 475. So we're right there at the very limit. I'm not doing anything. It's close. I usually like having a little more clearance. So I want to probably cut the top guides back a little bit. But by this number here, you're really, really close. It would work. I figured backwards from what we had minus all our numbers. So if you go the other direction, you can take 0.6, was it 35? You minus your cam lift, which is 0.477, minus 0.03 for clearance equals 128 thou. This was 125. See, we got 3 thou clearance. We got 3 thou extra. So theoretically, we can put this right together. We'll be at 3 thou clearance. We'll be good to go. And that's if he runs the big ass cam in it. Now, if you run the stock cam he's got in there, then we're fine. So if you want to cut the guide down, you take this cutter right here. It goes in a hole over here. Like this. It'll trim the OD of the guide down slightly. And then when it gets down to a certain point, which is the inner cutter way down here, the lower one down there, that will start cutting the guide down shorter. So that's how you do that. When needed. So that's how you do it. So usually I cut these down about 30 thou. Right now they're usually about 480 height right there. Bing, boom, boom. Looks like this one's around 450-ish. I like going down about 430, gives you an extra 20. That's usually what I cut them out. So on the intake, it's going to be close. On the exhaust, we got tons of clearance. Alright, so it's just a matter if I want to give a little extra for the intake clearance or not. Debatable. Okay. The other thing this does, it turns down the guide a little bit, a few thou, so this doesn't have such a high expansion on it, so it usually doesn't destroy the seal so much. But not always. Okay. So this job here, we have to measure the other head to see if it needs to be cut, because right now this one here has just enough room that we don't have to do it, because we got 128 in there. Now what you don't know, that I do know, is these collars right here are bigger than the seal. So we're measuring this top lip of that seal to the collar, which is this dimension here. Then we can see better. How about this way? Okay, so see how you got clearance right in here? That is a lousy picture. Let's get the focus where it's supposed to focus. I don't know if that got better or not. I think it did. Okay, so when this sits on top of the guide right here, you see that height right there? You get about 25, 30 thou right there. See how it drops down inside the collar there, so you actually gain that extra clearance. See? So if you take that number you had over there and you add in the difference in height, whatever that is, you gain that clearance. So instead of having 3 thou clearance, you probably got 33 extra clearance, which is plenty. So that means you don't have to cut it. Most of the time I cut it anyway, but. Alright, so anyway, there's a few different things there. It's all a bunch of numbers. I'm sure I confused everybody. Most of the stuff I do in my head because I've done it so much. Okay, so what I need to do is figure out what these other numbers are going to be. So I know I want to gain about 20, I got to gain 30 thou on the springs here over those. So I'm going to see what I got here for more clearances. So let's get some quick dimensions going here, figure out what we got. Okay, favorite tripod. Alright, so spring is in here already. Little collar. Well, the other thing you want to know about is this seal has 300 thou depth in it. That's where the collar goes over the guide. So you try to keep 300 thou here if it's possible. So I don't know if you can see it, but right now we're at 350. So we try to keep in that area. I mean, I can put some valve spring shim in here if I want. Jack the tension up, which I don't really need to do. But I could if I wanted to. Okay, so that goes in there. Got our springing in there. Collar. Valve spring compressor. Keeper. And another keeper. Now we measure this one, see what dimensions we got on it. And we're coming in about 380. Pretty close to what this one was, surprisingly. A little bit less on this one, about 375, 370. Yeah, this one's probably close to 390. So where's my handy data caliper? About 380, see? Can't go by this 100% because these collars are not necessarily straight. They don't have a full load on them. 370, I'm pretty close. 70, and what was this other one? 80? 80. Okay. So I expect to be a lot more different on that. So that means I got to put springs on this one. So if I got to change springs, we're changing all the springs. Before I was just going to use the one spring, but now we're going to put more in there. That's why you can't always go by how much height is sticking up. You actually have to measure stuff. Now this head might be totally different than that head. Maybe that's why the difference is. I don't know. We'll find out here in a minute. Oh, valve, valve, valve. Who's got a valve? There's a valve. Something's not in there all the way. See how the keepers are sticking up in the air a little bit? That means they are not in there all the way. So there's something going on. Most likely me. Come on. Does not want to go in there for some reason. There it goes. See, it's now more flush now. In there better. Easy keepers are flush or just slightly above. If they're below, usually there's a problem. Okay. And ooh, this one's really low. Yeah, this one's way low. Okay, so 368, just like the other head was on the exhaust. And the intake is a big difference. We're at 340. Big difference.